Well, it turns out the love was real. The Carolina Panthers traded into the first round of draft of South Carolina. We'll break it all down right here on Locked On Panthers.
You are Locked On Panthers, your daily Carolina Panthers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into another edition of the Locked On Panthers podcast, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, as always, Julian Council, talking Carolina Panthers with you every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and of course, Friday, where I am live right now past midnight Eastern time, talking about the first round of the NFL draft and reacting to the Panthers making what I believe was a surprise to all of us that they traded into the first round. Just one pick into the first round from 33 to 32 to select Xavier Legette. But be sure to check out the podcast on YouTube, where you should be watching live right now. Subscribe or follow the show for free on YouTube or wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. And be sure to follow me, Julian Council, on Twitter at Julian Council. We're typically throughout the offseason, I'm right here on a Friday answering your weekly Friday mailbag questions, but the draft's happening, so we don't really need to get into mailbag questions this week. But next Friday, I'll be back answering your weekly Friday mailbag questions, either at me or DM me. But of course, follow me on Twitter. It's right there at Julian Council to get those questions into me. LinkedIn Jobs is our sponsor today. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. It's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Wow. I am still trying to wrap my mind around what just happened 10 minutes ago when the Panthers decided that, no, we're not waiting until Friday night. We can't wait one more pick, one more day. We're going to get our guy right now. And before we get into all of it, I honestly don't hate the premise of, if you love somebody, go get him. I just do wonder, did you have to get him today? Was he not going to be there tomorrow? Maybe not. I don't know who Buffalo wanted, but the surprise of the night was the Bills trading with the Chiefs to let them get Xavier Worthy. What the hell are you doing, Buffalo? That's what part of Charlotte cares about. But the people who actually, love the city, love the Panthers, we're going to focus on the team that actually plays here in Carolina, the Panthers. On Thursday evening, not too long ago, traded up from 33 to 32 with the Buffalo Bills, and also received the 200th overall pick in the draft, which is in the second round. They gave up pick 33 and 141, which is in the fifth round. A pick actually was a pick swap that they received from the Giants in the Brian Burns trade. They did all of that, moved up one spot, got a sixth-rounder return, gave up a fifth-rounder, and ended up selecting Xavier Legette. So overall, the return, it's not bad at all. You moved up one spot to get your guy, and you ended up getting a sixth-round pick, which you did not have, and then you gave up one of your fifth-round picks. It was the first of your two fifth-round picks. Not that big of a deal. You still have the same draft compensation as far as the number of picks you had going into the draft. But I am stunned that they decided to do this. I was adamant that I did not want to see Carolina give up assets to go into the draft, to go into the first round to get a player, even if they felt like that was someone who's going to be a big-time player for them. I felt like they could have stayed at 33, got a first-round caliber player, and been totally fine. And I'm sitting here right now, and I still feel like they probably could have stayed at 33 and got a first-round caliber player, and maybe the exact same player in Xavier Legette. But apparently for them, they felt like that was not the case. Brandon Beane, Dan Morgan, we know they have a relationship that dates back to maybe even his playing days here in Carolina. I'm not quite sure if that was the case, but we know that Dan Morgan came from Buffalo to Carolina, where he worked underneath Brandon Beane, the GM up there in Buffalo. Of course, Beane has his time dating back to Carolina as assistant general manager under Marty Herding before he left to go to be the Bills GM. So they have that relationship, and I think that has been a big part of not giving up too much to get up to 32 to take Legette, which is a positive. The second time this offseason that we have seen Dan Morgan use his connections. Joe Shane, who was also in Buffalo with Beane and with Morgan, trading Brian Burns away and be able to get decent compensation considering the timing there for Burns. Now he does it with Brandon Beane to get Legette. So I don't really hate the compensation. I think it's totally fine. I just didn't know if they needed to do this. And I'm just kind of caught off guard. I know a lot of y'all are wondering, what are you doing, Panthers? Why did we do this? This is who they wanted, clearly. Legette was on some podcast earlier this week talking about how the Panthers said, hey, if you're there, we're going to take you. And they did not lie. Now, Dave Canales gave us a nice smokescreen on Wednesday saying, yeah, we told that to 50 different guys. And I believe the smokescreen because they probably have told that to a lot of guys. If you're there, you're our guy. We talked about last year. I brought it up yesterday on the show. Last year with CJ Stroud, Josh McCown was talking to him about, hey, we'll play basketball when you're here in Charlotte. Of course, he never came to Charlotte. That was something that they said to a lot of guys, that when you're there, we're going to take you. And the Panthers did not wait. They went out and got Xavier Legette, who they felt like was the receiver that they think can come in, be an instant impact player, at least in special teams, begin the season. And then we'll see if he does come in and start off as a starter for the Panthers alongside Adam Thielen and Deontay Johnson. This would not have been my selection, but I'm, of course, not qualified to make selections in the NFL. I'm just merely a podcast host sitting here before you, my audience, humble, and sitting here just kind of surprised. AD Mitchell's who I wanted. I've been pretty clear about that. If he was there at 33, or I guess they're going to trade to 32, if he was there, that's the guy I wanted, and he was sitting there. I feel like he's the better player. We'll see what he does in his career. But at this point in time, it doesn't really matter. Panthers went up, and they got Xavier Legette. And let's not even sit here and act like he's not a player, because last year he did turn up at South Carolina. I saw him in person at Bank of America Stadium to kick off the season when North Carolina played South Carolina. Gamecocks got their ass kicked, because that's what happens to them every single Saturday. But Legette was the one guy that really stood out in that game, exploded, had a great season, 71 receptions, 1,255 yards, 7 touchdowns, playing for a terrible South Carolina team. And the thing about it, too, was that was the first year he's ever produced at a college level. I know apparently there's stories about how he lost his parents. He had a motorcycle accident. We'll go into more details to get to know him better as he transitions into being a Carolina Panther. I'm pretty hesitant to take a player or to want a player who does this and then does this. So his first 4 years at South Carolina, 9 receptions, 80 yards his freshman year, 1 touchdown. The next year, 7 receptions, 113 yards, 0 touchdowns. 2021, 8 receptions, 63 yards, 1 touchdown. 2022, 18 receptions, 167 yards, 3 touchdowns. Then all of a sudden, he blows up last year with the 71 receptions, 1,255 yards, 7 touchdowns. Is an absolute stud. And if you want to go a game even further back, take it to the Gator Bowl against Notre Dame back in December of 2022, when he did blow up in that game, kind of showed you what he could do. 7 receptions for 78 yards, had 2 touchdowns in that game against Fighting Irish. That was a glimpse into who Xavier Legette potentially could be for South Carolina. Didn't think he was going to be what he was this past fall. And I would give him a lot of credit too. Juice Wells was a first-team All-SEC receiver in 2022. He's now transferred to Ole Miss. He was their guy at South Carolina. He was who they were depending on last year. Has an injury to his foot in the preseason. Barely plays against North Carolina. Really wasn't out there the entire season for South Carolina. Legette had to step up, be the number 1 guy, someone who had not produced at all, and then has an explosive season. Has the body type that you're wanting, 6'1", 217, physical specimen. He looks like a receiver you want. And the comparison that Dane Brugler of The Athletic gave is that he looks like DK Metcalf. Where is the majority of this staff coming from? Seattle. They see a DK Metcalf, and they're thinking to themselves, this guy can come in here and be that kind of player. Now, did Xavier have the same career at South Carolina in the SEC as DK had at Ole Miss? Absolutely not. And I would be surprised if he goes on to have the same career that DK's had so far, because I just don't think they're the same player. But looking at the body type and just the production from last year, this coaching staff believes he can be someone who can help them. And Dave Canales said last Thursday they believe that they still needed to look at skill positions on the offensive side of the ball, and they have done that and address that need by getting Xavier Legette. I'm someone who wanted to see him get a wide receiver. And I also told y'all at the end of the show yesterday, quite honestly, yes, I have my preferences, but at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. What I care about is the Panthers drafting players can come in and help the team win. If A.D. Mitchell came in here, my hope was he can help the team win. If it was Ladd McConkey, same case. Xavier Legette now, all I really care about is they can come in and help the team win. But as far as my job here, to give y'all analysis and my opinions, this is not the pick that I wanted to see, and I don't think this was the best wide receiver on the board. I felt like it was A.D. Mitchell. I did see some recent mock drafts from all the experts out there pointing to Xavier Legette potentially going at the tail end of the first round, and that's what happens. He goes to the Carolina Panthers as they trade up to 32 with Buffalo to draft their guy, Xavier Legette. There was a ton of talk about him going to Carolina. So that's where we're at. Let me continue to gather my thoughts here. Take a quick pause, then come back and maybe read some of the comments y'all have and get into some of the Panthers options and who was there also. We're going to talk about some other players, some other options that were there at 32, 33. The Panthers decided to bypass in order to get Legette 32nd overall. So we'll get into that here in just a moment on Locked on Panthers. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't just a job board. LinkedIn helps you hire professionals you can't find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for a new job but might be open to the perfect role. In a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. On LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. Hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn. LinkedIn knows that small businesses are wearing so many hats and might not have the time or resources to hire. LinkedIn is constantly finding ways to make the process easier. They even just launched a new feature that helps you write job descriptions, making the process even easier and quicker. In fact, 2.5 million small businesses use LinkedIn for hiring. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnfl. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnfl to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply.
This episode of your favorite Locked On podcast is brought to you by the best meal kit service in the game, Home Chef. No more having to answer the dreaded question, what are we going to do for dinner tonight? Thanks to Home Chef and their chef design recipes that are delivered directly to my door, all pre-packaged, pre-portioned. They even peel the garlic cloves for you. And each recipe, one of my favorites, blackened mahi, comes with a full page of easy to read instructions that include customization options and pictures to guide you along the way through the step-by-step process so you don't have to ask, is that what chard looks like? I cannot recommend Home Chef enough, especially right now, because for a limited time, Home Chef is giving Locked On listeners 18 free meals, free dessert for life, and of course, free shipping on your first box if you head to homechef.com/lockedon today. That's homechef.com/lockedon for 18 free meals and free dessert for life. Yes, you heard that right. Homechef.com/lockedon. Must be an active subscriber to receive free dessert.
All right. Apologies there, obviously, for the live viewers who got to pay the bills here on Locked On. So appreciate Ross Jackson there of Locked On Saints with that nice ad read. We are reacting live right now on YouTube. The Carolina Panthers traded into the first round on Thursday evening to select Xavier Legette, the wide receiver out of South Carolina. They traded up with the Bills going from 33 to 32. They have given up the 41st overall pick in the draft there in the 5th round and have received the 6th round pick, 200th overall in the draft on Saturday afternoon up there in Detroit. And trying to break this down, I'm seeing people say that this was a 5th-year option move. I don't really buy too much into that whole principle of the 5th-year option. Like, it is nice to have the Panthers. It feels like more often than not recently have exercised it. They did it with, they did it with Sam Darnold. They did it with Brian Burns. They did it with Derek Brown recently. And now they have a big decision that we'll get into in the coming days with J.C. Horn. And I don't think that's something they should do based off the fact he's barely played football. And what's his job? To play football. And I know he's not wanting to be injured. I think he's a good player, yada, yada, yada. I understand all of that. I just don't think it's something that they need to do. The 5th-year option is great to have. There's so many teams across the league that draft guys in the first round and they don't utilize 5th-year option. Just going off of typically what happens, over half of the guys that were taken tonight are not going to receive their fifth-year option. That's just how the league works out. And wide receiver is one of those positions that like has the biggest bust potential. I saw this from, it was Adam Schefter put it out there, but Paul Hembakaitis, who is producer for Mike Greenberg's show. He's been a long-time researcher at ESPN, and he put out the hit rate for positions in the NFL draft since it was between 2000 and 2019. Wide receiver had the lowest hit rate in the first round. 27% of the wide receivers panned out. Now, had they taken Legette 33rd overall instead, would that have made it more likely? No, it's just a stat that was put out there over a 20-year span, which is obviously a big sample size, especially as the NFL has become more of a passing league and more wide receivers are coming out of college more polished and able to come in and make an impact. As we saw a record 7 wide receivers went in the first round tonight, and some of those were surprises, like Ricky Pearsall going to San Francisco. 31st overall. Did not see that one coming. A.D. Mitchell not being taken. I don't think Lamikaki is necessarily that big of a surprise, although I thought that maybe had KC not wanted Xavier Worthy and the Bills weren't willing to trade back not once but twice, that he may have been somebody that they would take him, but they got the speed, and that's going to be scary for a lot of teams out there in the AFC, mainly because it's Mahomes getting a receiver who has speed. Now, will he catch the football? That's a question that the Chiefs have to worry about, not us here in Carolina. But the fifth-year option, I don't really care all about that much. Like, he's got to come out here and show in 3 years that he's good enough. And if he's not, then they won't exercise it and he'll only play for 4 years. Like, I just don't think that you needed to move up just for that extra year of flexibility, when oftentimes, now here in Carolina it gets utilized, but a lot of times it doesn't. They didn't utilize it with CJ Henderson, and they traded for him. Now, they didn't draft him, but they did trade for him. You've seen examples all across the league every single year of guys that, oh yeah, fifth-year options can be great. Don't get the fifth-year option. He's got to earn it. So we'll see how that works out. As far as the guys that were also on the board at the point in time, like A.D. Mitchell, that's going to be the one that a lot of people are going to talk about. And if y'all been watching, listening over the last weeks, you know that's who I wanted the Panthers to get if he was sitting there at 33. And didn't work out that way. I think he was the better of the Texas receivers, and that's not how the NFL operated because Worthy's fast. So, and he produced, can't deny that. So it didn't work out that way for Mitchell going to the first round. Panthers could have gotten him. I thought maybe they could have stayed. I don't know. I will really be interested to see what Buffalo does on Friday night, I guess later tonight, to see what they do. And then we can even react more to what the Panthers decided to do based off of what the Bills, maybe do they trade back again? I don't know. But Jackson Powers Johnson, another player who Carolina could have targeted. Center is the other position I've talked about as I wanted to see the Panthers go out there and attack it. And they can still potentially do that at 39. I don't know if Jackson Powers Johnson is still going to be available then. The Cowboys ended up not taking a center in the first round. They could have taken him. Graham Barton seemed like the guy a lot of people thought Dallas is going to take. He ended up going to Tampa Bay, so he's going to be here in the division. They ended up taking Tyler Guyton out of Oklahoma instead to likely be their starting left tackle. So Dallas, they're not ahead of Carolina in the second round, of course, based off of their success annually until they get to the playoffs, of course. So the Panthers don't really have to worry about that team. I don't know. I don't know if the Patriots will be interested. Yeah, you always have to wonder if someone's going to trade up potentially to get Jackson Powers Johnson. So maybe he's going to be sitting there at 39. If he's not, Zach Frazier out of West Virginia is somebody that comes to mind as definitely potentially being available in the draft. And corner, if they wanted to get a corner right there at 32, they could have done that. Cooper DeJean out of Iowa, he's not a first rounder when he was somebody people thought was going to be a first round pick. You got looking at defensive tackle. This is a team that needs defensive tackle talent. Johnny Newton out of Illinois, he's still available. Kool-Aid McKinstry, another corner out of Alabama, he's available. Ennis Rakestraw out of Mizzou, he's available. Braden Fisk out of Florida State, he's available if you want to go defensive tackle as well. There are some good players still on the board, but as far as the players that if you're just thinking who would you have taken instead at 32, I would have made a great argument for Jackson Powers Johnson to go there at 32. I would have made a great argument, obviously, for A.D. Mitchell, Johnny Newton. I would have been surprised even more than I was tonight sitting there. And it's not a surprise who they took. It's just a surprise that they decided that they were a little too jumpy. And I've seen people say that the Panthers were, I guess they were too impatient. If you got your guy and he ends up being someone who's going to be a great pass catcher for Bryce Young and make plays, then it doesn't really matter how you got to that role. I'm just still a little in shock at all of it as Carolina decided to do that. Looking at some other things, yeah, if their option is real, say $7 million saving wide receiver market. I mean, he could have probably would he got less money had they just waited into the second round. We'll see. If someone's saying this is Mingo all over again, I don't know if this is Mingo all over again. At least he came out and like put up big time numbers. Mingo just never did that at Ole Miss. So, I don't know. I don't know. I'm trying to wrap my mind around this pick as far as Panthers going to get Xavier Legette. Again, I'll give you some of his numbers from this past season. You go back to the bowl game against Notre Dame, who's great in that game of this past season. 71 receptions, 1,255 yards, 7 touchdowns, one of the best receivers in the SEC this past season there at South Carolina with Spencer Rattler throwing the ball. And the Panthers, they loved him, and they went up there and got him. And we'll see what they decide to do moving on into day 2 of the draft. Now, I'll take one more pick, or take one more break, and I'll come back, and we'll talk even more about the Panthers' options on night 2. And if they want to maybe trade back from 39. That was something that we had discussed over the last couple of weeks. Does it make sense to trade back from 39? They've already traded up. Are they going to trade back, try to get more assets? We'll see if they decide to do that. So we'll talk about that here in just a moment on Locked on Panthers. We've all been there before, either as a player or a fan. It's halftime and the scoreboard is not looking good. You're feeling low, not sure you or your team can pull out a win. That's when you dig deep, lift your head up, and say to yourself, time to get back in the game, pull off some bank heists, and take as much of my friend's money as I possibly can. That's right, the Smash Hit mobile game, Monopoly Go, lets you compete with your friends to get the most riches and biggest empire. It's the Monopoly you love, but on your phone anytime with tons of new twists, including leaderboards, compare your progress to your buddies. There's so much to do. Play on countless dynamic Monopoly boards. Make your friends bankrupt by smashing their landmarks with a wrecking ball. Charge other players rent for your iconic properties. You can even work with your friends to crack up a community chess and in tournaments to get extra rewards and climb the leaderboard. So get back out there, put on your game face, and download Monopoly Go, now free on the App Store or Google Play. So the Panthers take Xavier Legette. They trade up into the first round at 32. Couldn't wait one more day to get him. Very interested to see what Buffalo does later on Friday evening if they stay at 33, a team that a lot of people felt like at 28 was going to take a wide receiver. They decided to trade back with Kansas City to 32 and then trade back one spot to 33, allowing the Panthers to take Legette. So we'll see who they get. Do they take A.D. Mitchell? If they do, of course, Panther fans will be looking to see what he does there in Buffalo compared to what Legette does here in Carolina. Now, one thing to consider if you're going to do that is the Buffalo Bills have Josh Allen, a proven player in the NFL, one of the top 5 quarterbacks, arguably. I'm not here to argue it. In the NFL, we know the guy can play, and that's going to help out Mitchell, A.D. Mitchell, potentially, if he does go there to Buffalo, where here in Carolina, new offensive line's great. Adding Deontay Johnson helps. Of course, Thielen coming back. Still plenty of questions on whether Bryce Young can actually play at this level, at a high enough level to justify what the Panthers gave up last year to get him. And hopefully the Panthers getting a first-round pick this year can now end a lot of the people saying they didn't have a first-round pick. Well, they ended up getting a first-round pick. Didn't think they needed to get one. Maybe they felt like they did. And I did listen to, I want to say, I was watching the NFL Network broadcast. I want to say it was like Daniel Jeremiah who was talking about this, where they're all dumbfounded by the Bills trading with the Chiefs. They're thinking to themselves, maybe there was an agreement that we'll make this trade with you as long as you don't take the guy that we want. And maybe that's what it was. Like, Buffalo didn't want Legette, Carolina wanted him, but then that doesn't make any sense at all, because if Buffalo didn't want Legette, then you didn't need to move into the first round, unless, as y'all are bringing up, they just wanted the flexibility of the 5th-year option, which I think is overvalued. Like, the player has to actually produce, and having that flexibility it can be good, but again, it's really up to whether he goes out there and puts up the numbers. So I don't know. I don't think it's that big of a deal to me, honestly. As far as that being a justification to move up, you're gonna lose your 5th-round pick and get a 6th-round pick just to get up one spot to get a player who may have already been there before. I feel like if Buffalo really wanted Legette, they probably would have taken him instead of taking that deal from Carolina. But Bean and Morgan being buddies, that certainly helps out in this scenario as far as that goes. We'll have to wait and see, man. It's not the fairest comparison because Pickett was like a 4-year starter I just look at Kenny Pickett's career at Pitt, in different positions, obviously, but Pickett was not good at all at Pitt. And then he blows up his last year. They win the ACC. He's considered a Heisman Trophy contender, and he gets drafted in the first round of a bad quarterback draft. Like, as we've seen now, the guy was never worthy of a top or of a first round pick. And that was a bad draft class. Pittsburgh takes him because he's down the hall, and he's now not in Pittsburgh anymore. He wants to be traded to the Eagles, where he's never going to play, at least whatever. So I look at it like that. Like, I was confused by why anyone wanted Kenny Pickett and how he was valued over players like Sam Howell out of North Carolina, even biased aside. And he was much better last year than what Pickett was. Because, oh my God, because maybe he was actually good in college, where Pickett wasn't until one final year where things finally figured out. And here in the NFL, you don't really get time to figure things out. Like, you don't get 4 years to stink it up, and then all of a sudden it clicks. Like, Legette's not going to get 4 years he's not going to get 3 years to be bad and for him to not produce. And then, he's going to click his last year. If it does, all right, your franchise tag, you find a new deal. You don't get that much time to do that in the NFL. Jonathan Mingo may have only gotten 1 season to do it. Like, Terrace Marshall, is he getting an opportunity? They drafted another receiver, and you haven't produced at all for a brief period of time. Haven't really produced. Different coaching staff, understand that. Fresh start, sure. You just don't get that much time. That's kind of my point when it comes to the guys who didn't put up a lot of stats in college and all of a sudden got an opportunity. Now, A.D. Mitchell, there's also an argument can be made about him. He had injuries at Georgia, didn't play a lot there, did come into late in the season, make big plays in the playoff, and then had a great year at Texas last year. So you could probably make the same argument if you wanted to. But I don't know. It's be interesting to see how it works out. Of course, I hope it works out. It's a great story for everything I've heard about him. Just going to have to read up more on Legette as we get going here. Just losing his parents, going to South Carolina, which apparently they were saying on the broadcast was his dad started school. And then Charles Davis is like, why couldn't it have been Tennessee? Well, where would that gotten him anyway? So he probably still did the NFL, but wouldn't have won the SEC either way. Yeah, good for him. Welcome to Carolina. That's who they wanted. As far as just the options, trading back now, it's hard for me to see that happening just with who is potentially going to be on the board. As I mentioned, like, I think DeJean's probably going to be gone by then. Johnny Newton, McKinstry, hard to see that. I don't think they're going to double dip on wide receiver. Had they not gone out and gotten Deontay Johnson, they could have done that. I don't see them. I don't think Labaconke's at 39. Keon Coleman certainly could be there. I know the thoughts that he's pretty polarizing among the fan base. They could go Edgerrin Cooper out of A&M. I've seen that be a popular pick amongst a couple of local beat reporters as far as their mock drafts have gone heading into the draft. And as Rakestraw, corner out of Mizzou, would make sense. Just like looking at ESPN's top board, DeJean's would be 33. You have Newton. If they just go in order, DeJean's 33, and that's not who they're going to take, obviously. Buffalo's going to take a receiver. So Buffalo takes a receiver with their pick. And let me see if I can pull up the rest of the draft. Patriots, who's New England going to take? I would think they probably should take a receiver too. Maybe they get Labaconke. People can make their lazy jokes about a white Patriot receiver. Maybe that happens. We'll see. Quarterbacks are all gone now. I was about to come up here and talk about how maybe the best case scenario for the Panthers was all those quarterbacks going off the board, because that then allowed teams to be aggressive with offense and not think about defense at all. And then you could get a defensive player at the top of the second round, and maybe a guy like Nate Wiggins could be available. Then he goes off the board to Baltimore, and I was like, damn. And they trade up in the first round, of course, and get Xavier Legette. Man. All right. So I would like to see center. That's still my preference. This doesn't really change things too much as far as what they have with their draft haul. Because now looking at the picks, they now have 39, 65. Those are the 2 picks they have for tomorrow night. And depending on what they decide to do, they can maybe add to that total. And the best way to add to that total is by trading back from 39. I don't know if they want to do that. They have 39. They have 65 right now. They have 101. They have 142. They have 200. And then they have 240. 240, I don't value that much. 200, it's kind of the same case. Pretty late pick there in the 6th round. It's pretty much a 7th round pick. So you now have like 2 7th round picks, and you only have 1 5th rounder. You have your 4th rounder to start off the 4th round. You have your 3rd rounder, and you have your 2nd rounder from New York. and at 39. I kind of want them to just get an impact player just now how things have worked out and that they don't have those 2 picks right there in like the middle part of the 5th round back to back. I wouldn't mind seeing them dress if they can get Jack Spowers-Johnson if he's there. That's who I'd want. Zach Frazier would be nice too. And a corner can't hit against corner at that situation at 39. But they got the receiver, and that's what I wanted to see them do. Get another receiver, not the receiver that I necessarily wanted, but this is a receiver who they believed in. Is someone that a lot of people have been talking about. This is who the Panthers are going to get. And it seemed, and even recently, like I looked at Mike Kay, who we have on the show pretty often, looked at his mock draft, what Joe Person put out there, and neither one of those guys who are awesome or super plugged in had the Panthers taking Legette. They had Worthy. I forget who Joe had, but I know Mike had Worthy, and they trade him in the 1st round. They get Legette. So here he is. Welcome to Carolina, Xavier Legette. I'm sure that they've had a press conference or something that they usually do like a phone call or whatever. So I have to go back and listen and see what Dan had to say, what Dave had to say, and maybe even Tepper, who apparently had a little tiff with the folks over at Dilworth Neighborhood Grill on Thursday evening, driving up to the stadium. Guy just cannot get out of his own way, man. But we'll see how it all works out. But we got another big night for us coming up here on Friday night, as we already hear early Friday morning. I'll be back again live after the 2nd and 3rd round, probably around the same time here, midnight on Saturday morning on the 27th. So check out the show again on YouTube at that point in time. Appreciate all the folks who jumped in here. Got 292 people right now reacting or listening, watching the show. So appreciate all of y'all who come on here to listen to the show. That's going to wrap up this edition of the Locked On Panthers podcast, part of Locked On Podcast Network, hosted by yours truly, Julian Council. Again, y'all subscribe and follow the show for free on YouTube or wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. And be sure to follow me, Julian Council, on Twitter at Julian Council, where on Fridays, typically, I'm here on the show answering your weekly Friday mailbag questions. I'll be doing that again next Friday, either at me or DM me on Twitter to get those questions into me for next week's show. But in the meantime, be safe, be happy, be whole. As always, keep pounding and I guess brace for impact, because who the hell knows what they're going to do next on day 2 of the NFL draft.